the situation here. What does cholesterol do? Why is it important? And why is it not unsafe to have an elevated cholesterol level?
Right. Well, again, the part of the problem is we use the word cholesterol, but you don't have any cholesterol in your bloodstream because it's not soluble in blood, and therefore it has to be carried around in a little sphere called a lipoprotein. So when we say cholesterol, we really mean lipoprotein. And the one that people are worried about is called the low density lipoprotein. So to say you've got to raise cholesterol is always a nonsense because there's no such thing, but the terminology is confused and almost ridiculously so. So essentially, you can eat cholesterol. Egg yolks have got the highest, apart from I think shrimps or something. What we call them, we call them shrimps. You call them anyway.
You call them prawns. I mean. We call them shrimps.
Well, we call them prawns. You call them shrimps. Yeah. I said, what's the difference? So it's just what they call them. So you can eat cholesterol. If you had about 20 eggs, you would, through the egg yolks, you would bring in you consume about as much as your liver naturally synthesizes each and every day, which is about 5 grams. So if you ate 20 eggs, your liver would say, well, thanks very much. I'll not bother producing the cholesterol anymore because I'm getting it from the diet. So the liver produces it. It's sent out, and actually not in low density lipoprotein. It's sent out in a thing called a very low density lipoprotein, which you probably also heard called a triglyceride. It's the same thing. For some reason, we don't call. Anyway. Very low density lipoproteins contain fat and they contain cholesterol. They go out of the liver, they travel around, they lose their fat content, they shrink down to become a low density lipoprotein, which is, say, about a quarter the size or something. And at that point, the liver then reabsorbs 99% of your LDL. A certain amount of it just still kicks around in your bloodstream. Cells that think they need cholesterol have a receptor that pulls the LDL out of the bloodstream into the cell, where it's then broken down, and the fats and the cholesterol are used for various functions.
So possibly when you see the total cholesterol on your blood test, total cholesterol, yes. What total serum cholesterol is then, how is that measured?
Well, it's measured in basically you measure, there's a lot of different lipoproteins in your bloodstream. There's a low density lipoprotein, there's a high density lipoprotein, there's very low density lipoproteins, there's intermediate density lipoproteins, and there's a thing called chylomicrons, which are even bigger and carry fat from your gut around your body. They don't tend to get measured. What you measure is the VLDL, the HDL, and the L. You don't measure the HDL generally. You measure all three, and you say that is your total cholesterol level. Except because there's a lot more VLDL, you divide the VLDL by 5. There's a thing called the Freiburg equation. Don't bother going there. So actually, it's not really your total cholesterol. It's about a quarter of your total cholesterol. So you measure your HDL, your LDL, your VLDL. You look at the VLDL and the HDL, and when you've taken them away, what's left is assumed to be LDL, and that is the figure that you'll get. And in America, they use milligrams per deciliter. In Europe and the rest of the world, we use millimoles per liter. So in general, a level of 200-ish milligrams per deciliter is your total cholesterol level considered normal. All right. Of that, about half of it will be LDL, approximately, something like that. And the rest will be made up of other things. Now, HDL is also called good cholesterol, and LDL is called bad cholesterol. The idea that a chemical can be good and bad is interesting and very scientific.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So it's the LDL that the pharmaceutical industry are trying to lower with statins and other things. And the others, they're now beginning to get interested in VLDL because they've realized that actually, stepping back slightly, the VLDL goes up and the HDL goes down if you've got diabetes or insulin resistance. So they do that on you. So the gap between the two starts to widen, and the ratio between VLDL and HDL is actually quite important because it's telling you have a problem with carbohydrate glucose metabolism, and you've probably got diabetes. But the LDL doesn't alter much in that situation. So it's if you like, that's it. That I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. But the interesting another step back, I did mention a thing called chylomicrons, which if an LDL was the size of a tennis ball, or a baseball, and a VLDL was the size of a basketball, approximately. It's not quite. Then a chylomicron would be the size of a big beach ball on the beach. It would be a huge, great thing. And they get constructed in the guts. They get filled with fat if you eat fat and cholesterol, because you can't absorb fat without cholesterol. And then it travels around the body, losing all of this fat and cholesterol, shrinking down till it becomes about the size of an LDL, at which point it's absorbed into the liver and broken down. So from that, fat in the diet never actually becomes LDL. It has no relationship to it whatsoever. And so when you say to people, well, try to tell me how eating fat raises your LDL, what is the mechanism by which it happens? And there is no mechanism for it to happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen. So again, I'll guarantee you speak to 1,000 doctors, none of them will know any of this. They will not know any of this.
You know, there are doctors. I mean, there are lots of doctors over here that are not qualified to operate a practice. But these people are of the opinion, they're such simple people. They're of the opinion that saturated fat in the diet ends up as saturated fat coating the inside of your arteries. Now, I don't. How did you get through your undergraduate program if you can't think any more clearly than that? How did you get into medical school? But here they are. Here they are. They just repeat these idiotic, biologically impossible things and tell their patients with the absolute confidence conferred by their authority as a doctor,